Welcome back to the Shift RSA. My name is Jean, and today you join me in an Alfa Romeo Giulia Super. So that means a 2-liter turbo petrol, and not many people know this, but a single overhead cam. Let's get the headline figures out of the way. So this one is good for 147 kilowatts and 330 newton meters of torque. Now, these numbers aren't particularly impressive because the Golf 5 GTI made those numbers. But I don't know if this car is all about power. This one has received a stage 2 software tune. It does have a downpipe, it does have a cold air intake, so it's had some work done to it, so it's not going to perform today the same way that a stock one would. But for me, what I'm excited to test about this car is its handling capabilities, and then to see whether it matches up to the likes of the Audi A4, the BMW 3 Series, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, because this one actually is a worthy competitor. So with this one software tune and with its downpipe and all the rest, it should be good for 240 kilowatts at the crank. But as we know, that's not the power that matters. The power that matters is what comes out at the wheels in the back. And in this car, with its setup the way it is, it should be around 200 kilowatts, 200 plus kilowatts to the wheels. And it gets there via an 8-speed ZF gearbox, which is a torque converter. And this is the same one you'll find in BMWs as well. So let's see what all that power actually means in terms of real acceleration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the gearbox in manual. I'm going to use these lovely column mounted shift pedals. I'm going to click it down. Okay, so that's a substantial amount of power. The owner did tell me that once it's rolling, that power really comes in nicely, and I did experience that. I'm just going to wait for some traffic to move here, then we'll give it another dash. So before I give it another dash, it's worth mentioning that the owner very lovingly filled up the tank and added some OB1 racing fuel, which means I essentially have a full tank of very happy to go juice. Hell, for a 2-liter 4-cylinder motor, that's quite a bit of go. I believe 200 kilowatts any day. I think it might also be worth testing what she'll do in a straight line. So I'm going to do, since it doesn't have launch control, and since you can't turn the traction all the way off, you do have the DNA drive select here, which allows you to choose between a sort of economy option, your normal comfort, and then a sports setting, but there's no place to turn off traction. So also doesn't have launch control. So what I'm just going to do is a little old trick I used to do in my BMW. Just left foot brake. Going to give it a bit of a brake boost. Wow, I didn't record that in terms of times, but that that was quite a good bit of acceleration. It hooked up nicely, and luckily the traction control didn't kick in and cut my power, so that was very decent. This car, as I've mentioned earlier, compares directly with the BMW 3 Series, the Mercedes C-Class, and the Audi A4. But out of those three competitors, for me, it more relates to the BMW, because they are both 2-liter 4-cylinders. In both of them, the power goes to the rear wheels, and I think in terms of steering feel and in terms of geometry sitting here, for me, that's a very close comparison to draw. So that's the one I'm going to stick with for now. So these two cars then are very similar, and there's one or two details that does set them apart. I don't know how much you'll feel it, but for me, a very cool thing that this car comes with, it actually has a carbon fiber drive shaft, which is like race car stuff, and it comes standard in this car. Another thing you can tell they've agonized over in this car is the suspension as well. and it feels as composed, if not better, than a 3 Series. The biggest similarity for me in the two cars is the handling, and it's the steering, and that's really a compliment, because the 3 Series has been praised for its excellent driving feel. I know people have complained about the electronic power steering, but overall it's a very good package, and it, for a 4-door family car, it does handle very well. And I'm really getting the same sensation in this car. You really get a direct steering input. In other words, everything I do here at the steering wheel translates very directly to the wheels, and you really get pinpoint accuracy, and that's something that I know the 3 Series has, and I'm really experiencing it here, and I'm very happy to feel that. So the multi-link suspension in the rear and the double wishbones in front really give you a very composed feeling, and what that means is you can really hang in the long bends confidently, knowing the car isn't going to get bent out of shape, even if you are fully on the power, and that's a very reassuring thing. Once again, a feature that I do associate with the 3 Series, but I almost want to go as far as saying that this car does it a little better. Maybe I'm being biased. Maybe looking at this beautiful Alfa Romeo badge is sort of tugging at my heartstrings and making me think everything is better than it actually is. But I really can't fault this car for its incredible steering feel and for how composed it is at higher speeds. You can then go as far as saying that it really rotates well. When you move into a corner and you sort of want to power your way through it, you really get the steering angle that you want, and the rest of the body reacts in a way that you would expect it to. As I mentioned earlier, you can't turn the traction control completely off, but it does give you a little bit of play, and then it catches itself, which can be annoying. I know there are options and there are ways to work around it, but as far as transferring weight and placing the car in the corner, gauging where you are, and then sort of stringing all of that together to put a nice piece of driving together, I think this car does it very well, surprisingly well for a 4-door saloon. The comfort in this car really for me is on par with its German rivals. It does soak up the small things in the road, and it does feel solid. I can imagine taking a small family on a long trip with this car, because it is a very uninterrupted experience in here. In fact, most of the noise I'm getting is coming from the mirrors. It's wind noise, and other than that, it's pretty quiet and it's pretty comfortable. Having said that, if I can give some honest criticism, I do wish the front seats were a bit more supportive. I feel like they could have done with some extra bolstering here on the sides. Because you've got a car that handles so nicely, when you do get up to speed and you get going, you do start feeling like you're sort of sliding around on the seats a little bit too much, and that's not always nice. I would like to have that option that you do find in BMWs, where you adjust the bolstering here on the side and you can actually choose when you want that snug fit. One thing I really want to address with this car is the reliability factor, because the whole day that I've been driving around and running into people that I know, all of them look at it and go, how's the reliability? And I don't own this car, and it's not a long-term tester, but from what I've heard from the owner and from what I've seen on online forums, people don't seem to be too discontent with it, meaning there's Alfa Romeo or Italian cars traditionally have a bit of a habit of breaking down or leaking oil or things going, but with this being a 2017 model and the owner having had it for a while, he hasn't had any major complaints, and that's a very good thing, because any new car that rolls off the showroom floor these days is bound to have some sort of issue, and people are so happy to complain these days that I'm surprised I haven't heard more about this car. Now, you also have to take into account that not many people have bought this car, because in our country, in South Africa, people aren't too mad about Alfa Romeos for the simple fact that they just have a reputation. But to me, that's a pity, because it's such a good car. I've had it now for a few hours and I've been trotting around. I've been finding nice pieces of road and stretching its legs. I went through town once or twice, and it's such a good car. Really, if I had the money and this was parked next to a BMW, I might really be persuaded. And luckily or unluckily, because of the poor resale value, I would be able to get one of these for quite a good price. So then, let's get onto the design of the Alfa Romeo Giulia. To me, a beautiful car. Alfa Romeos of the past have been something to look at, and I think it's because of that Italian designer gene. I feel like all the things they make have to be beautiful or have to be pleasing to look at in some way, and I think they've gotten it right with this car. The part that impresses me the most is that everything else is on par. I struggle to fault it for build quality, although other motoring journalists might point at things like a flimsy infotainment wheel. They might point to materials down low that are a bit cheaper, but I haven't encountered anything in this car where I thought, yo, they really cut corners there. And I can really commend them for that, because the car is well screwed together. For a car this age, it is going on 4 years now, and for a car that's 4 years old, it has aged very well. Nothing looks dated. Yes, you don't have digital dials, but you do have a nice screen in the center here that gives you all sorts of information, and the infotainment system in the Super, which is this trim level, is very good. So the infotainment screen in the middle is very good. It's got everything you might need. It's got GPS, it's got the reversing camera. Look, the reversing camera's quality isn't great, but I think it's enough to help you identify if there's a toddler behind you, or a wall, or a pot plant. I think the infotainment is definitely up to scratch. I really like the fact that it's not a floating screen, as you find in many cars from this generation. The way that it's integrated into the dashboard really shows a good sense of design, and almost something that's coming back now. Screens are being integrated back into the dashboard now, and you're not missing out with this one. It still feels very contemporary. Other cool things that you'll find inside the car that sort of bring it up to date is collision warning. It can sometimes be annoying and a little bit sensitive. So if you're driving highway speeds and you're maybe not on the highway while driving that speed, some things next to the road, it might pick up as an obstruction or as a stationary vehicle, and then it starts shouting at you about braking and stopping and all of that. But it really doesn't happen often enough that it's annoying. It's just something that I noticed once. It has a very good speaker system. It's got a big enough boot. I've heard people complain about the boot not being square, so sometimes it makes loading things into it a little bit tricky. But I think it's almost non-Italian how practical this car is. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I think in terms of making a product that the consumer can also live with, I think they've done a bang-on job. So before I finish off, I'm going to tell you 3 things I really love about this car, and then I'm going to tell you 3 things that I'm not so mad about. So the first thing I really like is these column mounted shifters. They are just such a presence here behind the wheel. Yes, sometimes you get confused when you want to operate the switches back here, but they are so nice. They're so sturdy as well, and it's just so satisfying to pull them. I mean, pulling them, it feels like you're in a Ferrari. It's so nice and big. It's such an event. That's cool. Gotta have it. And you only get that in the Super. And then the second thing that I really like, and it's also here by the steering controls, and that's a starter button. It's a little red button right here that you start the car with, and I just think it's so cool. I'm so used to some of the other cars that I've driven where the starter button is either here in the center column or here on the dash, but having it here is such a special feeling. It's another thing, a lot like the paddle shifters, that feels almost like it's come from a Ferrari. And then the third thing I really like is the design. I just love the way it looks in here, and it's something I can really fall in love with and that I won't get tired of. The design for me is, I think, what makes an Alfa Romeo special, and I think they've gotten it right. Yes, you might say that it looks a little oversimplified in here, but your attention, first of all, should be over there. And I think simple also means timeless in a way. I think things that are more refined and more delicately designed tend to last better over time, and I really like what's going on here. The little ecosystem in here is really a welcoming place and somewhere you want to be, or somewhere you don't mind being. Now here's 3 things I don't like. And this is something that pertains to the handling. I know I said the car handles brilliantly, but one thing that I don't quite enjoy is the pedal feel on the brake pedal. And that's because it feels a little inconsistent at times. Sometimes you want to scrub some speed before entering a corner, and then it takes a little bit too much and you sort of get that jolt. I don't like that. I would like to feel a bit more secure in knowing exactly what I'm going to get when I touch the brake pedal, and I don't always get that. And then on another occasion, when I stood on the brakes, when I had to scrub quite a bit of speed, I didn't have that stopping power that I was expecting, and that was very disconcerting. It doesn't happen too often, and you can get used to it. I just feel like if you get everything else right to the degree that this car does, maybe just the braking as well, please. So the second thing that I don't like that much are the pillars in the car. They're actually quite thick. It's quite a solid feature, and it just feels to me like it hampers visibility a little bit, especially when you navigate tight spaces or parking lots, and you tend to just want to see, are you in, am I going to hit that? And they just seem a bit intrusive. And if you're like me and you're quite old school and you do actually check your blind spots like you should, I can see nothing over there. And when I check this side, I'm almost looking straight into this pillar, which can be a little inconvenient. And then the third thing that I'm not mad about, and the owner did mention that as well, and that is just a lack of an exhaust tone. I don't know if I'm getting anything through the speakers, but most of my sound in here while driving, even when driving fast, is coming straight from the motor, and that's not always a beautiful sound, especially in an inline four. That means you mostly get engine noise right from there, and you get wind noise here from the mirrors. So I just wish the exhaust was a little bit more lively so that you could really hear the engine being stretched out and really working. That would have been nice. So definitely worth mentioning. One thing I would improve on this car. So here's my final impression of the car. Now, I know I can ramble on forever, and I often do that and get distracted, but the point is that this is a very capable car. It's very athletic, it's very beautiful, and it seems to be standing the test of time. And for me, that's almost sad, because I don't know how much longer we'll be getting cars like this in our country from Alfa Romeo. It took almost 20 years for us to get a rear-wheel drive sedan from them. If you consider the 156 that we got, that was also a good looking car with a beautiful V6, but it was front wheel drive, and it feels to me like for that reason it was struggling to hold its own against the likes of BMW and Mercedes. So it took almost 20 years for us to get a car like this that ticks so many boxes, that is such a beautiful thing to look at, and that is so fun to drive. And because of the poor marketing and really the poor interest from our buyers in this car, I don't know how much longer these cars are going to be available in our country. If you consider that we don't even get the Ford Focus ST or Fiesta ST anymore because the market just isn't right for it, and I thought we were buying those things up. Would I buy one of these? Having spent the day in it, having driven it all around, having seen people's reactions to it, I really think I would. And that's really going out on a limb, because I'm quite a conservative buyer when it comes to my own money, and I still think I could live with this. It really is so well put together, and it's such an enjoyable machine. Would I take this over a BMW 320i, the F series? Most definitely. Only because there are so many of them on the road, and it's such a non-event to see one of those, unfortunately. You can bite my head off for that, it's just the way it is. Every second guy or girl has one, and they're just a dime a dozen. Also, the N series engines in those BMWs tend to give quite a bit of problems, and for that reason, if the two were next to each other and they were similarly priced, I know I would lose money, but I might just have to take this one. It's just that nice. Naughty. Do I think you should buy it? I think you should strongly consider it. I've said before, I'll buy it, definitely. I think you should definitely consider it. I think if you are in the market for a premium saloon, I think give this car a real chance. And by that, I mean go and drive one, see if you can find a good deal, and compare it to the other cars fairly enough. Don't be biased. Taste it like you would any other car, and give it a chance. I think this car deserves to be in your garage. It's definitely on par with the other three cars, And I do believe that Alfa Romeo is very much a love affair car. I think you do fall in love with it over time, and I think it becomes a partner in that sense. I think you become affectionate towards it, and that's why we forgive them when and if they even break down. Who should definitely buy this car? Drivers. People who love to drive should buy this car, because it ticks all the other boxes you might need it to tick, and that will make your wife happy, and that will make your parents happy, and whatever. But the one box that it doesn't just tick, it colors it in perfectly and scratches it out completely, is the handling box. And this thing just nails it. So there we go, guys. That's my full and honest review of the Alfa Romeo Giulia. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like, please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and also comment. Tell me if there's things I missed out on or things you think I can improve on. I would really appreciate that. Until next time, please be safe on the road.